On tonight,
North Korea best not make any more threats. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
President Trump sounds more like a North Korean leader.
Looks a little bit like we have our own nut with nukes.
Does the left really think President Trump is more of a threat than Kim Jong-un? Mark Stein enters Waters World.
Dynamite!
JJ's back. Jimmy Walker, now a no-nonsense Trump supporter. And tonight, he explains why we need to be more politically incorrect.
I go to war with who the I want to, but I really want to go to war with Donald Trump because Donald Trump trying to take food stamps from my mom, and that's all the she got.
Trump haters threatening the president over food stamps in this week's Real and Fake News. And meet the professional cuddlers hired to help anti-Trump snowflakes deal with his presidency. Waters World begins right now. Welcome to Waters World. I'm Jesse Waters. Terror in Charlottesville, that is the subject of tonight's Waters Words. White nationalists showed up in Charlottesville on Saturday protesting the removal of a Robert E. Lee statue. It's important to note that this was a nationwide rally that had been advertised for a month. Yet only a few hundred people showed up. This shows you how fringe the movement is. But it wasn't just white supremacists who showed up. Black Lives Matter radicals, Antifa members, and other so-called anti-fascist left-wing fringe groups descended upon the scene looking for trouble. Both sides came armed to the teeth with pepper spray, makeshift clubs, and shields. Here's an image that encapsulates what was going on. Shockingly, law enforcement in Charlottesville did not get in between the protesters or disperse the crowd, even as it turned violent. Fox News reporter Doug McKelway reported it this way.
Nobody was intent upon peace here from either side. People were intent on causing havoc and causing damage. And even as wounded were being brought out of the park, the police were sitting idly by. But when the tear gas started to fly, thrown by protesters, the police themselves began to evacuate that. I asked the guy who was in charge, I said, "Where are you going?" He said, "We're leaving. It's too dangerous." They had an opportunity to nip this thing in the bud, and they chose not to.
The police chief and the Charlottesville mayor are going to have to answer for this dereliction of duty. Things turned deadly when a man rammed his Dodge Challenger into a crowd of protesters, killing a 20-year-old female, Heather Heyer. The driver of the car was James Alex Fields, Jr. Media reports suggests he is a loner and a white supremacist sympathizer. Now, if the allegations against Fields are true, this man is a political terrorist and a bigot. The crew that he's running with, especially the ones that came to the rally armed with street weapons, are despicable people. After news of this broke, President Trump said this.
We condemn in the strongest possible terms this egregious display of hatred, bigotry, and violence on many sides. On many sides. It's been going on for a long time in our country. Not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama. This has been going on for a long, long time. It has no place in America. What is vital now is a swift restoration of law and order and the protection of innocent lives.
The president was clearly condemning violence on all sides, which there was. And he was looking at this from a big picture perspective in the larger context of hatred in America. By condemning violence on all sides, the president was condemning white supremacists as well as the left-wing activists who were mixing it up on the streets too. But the president's failure to specifically condemn the white supremacists by name, who were the ones that instigated the protests and whose actions allegedly led to death, has caused upheaval. CNN's Ana Navarro said this.
This speech today was shameful. Here is the bottom line. This was not many sides. This is one side. It is white supremacists trying to instill terror in the streets of America.
Kurt Bardella on MSNBC added this.
America First is really code for white first. This is the Republican Party right now that's on display. Donald Trump's Republican Party.
Maxine Waters tweeted this. No, Trump, not on many sides, your side. And Rob Reiner said, let's be clear. The hatred we're seeing in Virginia lies at the feet of Donald Trump. Stoked during the campaign, his silence condones this. And John Legend added, we have Nazi sympathizers and white nationalists in the White House. Condemn them too. They should not be receiving taxpayer money. And Michael Moore wrote, Trump's America, the last days of white rule. It's always a bitch to have to give up power you've held for 300 years. The left quickly taking advantage of a tragedy to smear the President of the United States as a racist responsible for death. First of all, Black Lives Matter and Antifa have more connections to the Democratic Party than white supremacists have to the Republican Party. Left-wing radical groups have terrorized this country over the last several years, shooting police officers, rioting in the streets, and assaulting innocent civilians. Has the Democratic Party leadership condemned left-wing violence? Not so much. As a matter of fact, after a Bernie Sanders volunteer shot Republican Congressman Steve Scalise, Democratic leadership blamed both sides for the shooting.
There's a lot of heated rhetoric from all different directions.
I think there's sometimes rhetoric on all sides that are not quite acceptable.
I do think that the language, the rhetoric on both sides has gotten out of control.
And when a Black Lives Matter supporter assassinated police officers in Dallas, here's what President Obama said.
First of all, I think it's very hard to untangle the motives of this shooter. I think the danger, as I said, is that we somehow suggest that the act of a troubled individual speaks to some larger political statement across the country.
Now let's just pretend the white supremacist who was driving the car was a Muslim. The media would call him a lone wolf and say his motivations were unclear. Remember, this is how CNN described the Islamic terror attack in London as a van attack. Did they describe this as a Dodge Challenger attack? And the same people who don't like Donald Trump saying Islamic terrorism are urging him now to say white supremacism. For a party who called Islamic terrorism workplace violence, spare everybody the lectures. If hundreds of thousands of Islamic terrorists have nothing to do with Islam, then why does one white supremacist have anything to do with Donald Trump? We can use the left's own rationalizations against them all day, but we won't. It's tedious to listen to both sides fight over which side hates Nazis more. What we saw in Charlottesville were fringe fanatics who don't represent this country. America is not a racist nation. It's time we stop acting like it is. All right, not sure what we're going to do next, but we have a great show. Listen, are Maxine Waters and Susan Rice siding with North Korean dictator? We'll debate it next. And
you say that you, as president, would be willing to launch a preemptive strike against North Korea's nuclear capability.
First, I'd negotiate. I would negotiate like crazy. Now, if that negotiation doesn't work, you better solve the problem now than solve it later, Tim. And you know it, and every politician knows it, and nobody wants to talk about it.
That was Donald Trump back in 1999, sounding a lot like today. So if nothing has changed in nearly 2 decades, why are so many against President Trump now trying a new, tougher approach? Just Friday morning, he tweeted, military solutions are now fully in place, locked and loaded. Should North Korea act unwisely? Hopefully Kim Jong-un will find another path. Joining me now, Fox News contributor Tammy Bruce and executive editor at Bustle.com, Julie Alvin. So Julie, locked and loaded.
Yeah.
Does that make you nervous? A lot of people on the left kind of upset about that.
Of course it makes me nervous. This is scary rhetoric. This is video game rhetoric. This is not a video game. There are millions and millions of lives of South Koreans and Americans at stake. I certainly think that, North Korea is a terrible threat, and I'm terrified by North Korea, but I don't like when the language coming out of our president sounds like the language coming out of the guy that's been freaking everyone in the world out.
A lot of the language coming out of many presidents' mouths, Democrat and Republican, haven't slowed down the nuclear ambitions of the North Koreans at all, have they, Tammy?
Well, yeah, we've had obviously a couple of decades here of nicer rhetoric and giving them basketballs and whiskey and sending, Rodman over. And we still have them cheating.
I'm just surprised Rodman wasn't able to solve this thing.
I know he hasn't been able to solve it.
Unbelievable.
So look, we've seen that has not helped, obviously. But what you're hearing from the president is rhetoric that the North Koreans understand and that China understands. And the mission is to make sure they know that this is a very different time.
Yeah, he's speaking their language. And quickly, I just want to have you guys and the audience understand where the left is coming from in this. This is what Susan Rice said we should do. Remember Susan Rice? Here she is. History shows that we can, if we must, tolerate nuclear weapons in North Korea the same way we tolerated the far greater threat of thousands of nuclear weapons from the Soviets during the Cold War. Also, her friend Maxine Waters, no relation to Jesse, said this. Roll the tape.
I think there's some things that they want from us, and we have to find out whether or not we can work with them on the things that they're asking for.
That was the Congresswoman coming out of the club, obviously. TMZ caught her right there. So let's tolerate the nuclear weapons, and then let's give them whatever they want, Julie.
That is not what she said.
What did she say?
She said we should talk about whether or not we can maybe give them some things that they want. Look, I don't want to give North Korea anything that they want. I also don't want to tolerate nuclear weapons, but I think that we should talk about diplomacy. I think we should talk about additional sanctions.
Haven't we been talking about diplomacy and sanctions and giving the North Koreans a lot over the years already, and we're now at this point?
I mean, perhaps, but I think that diplomacy, like that needs to be exercised to the absolute limits of its capabilities before we talk about preemptive nuclear war.
I think we are. And you know, it's funny Maxine wants to negotiate with the North Koreans, but doesn't want to talk to President Trump about anything.
Yeah.
Wants him impeached.
Look, responding to North Korea doesn't mean we're going to use nuclear weapons. We've got plenty of conventional weapons that are going to be able to deal with this. But remember, when we think about what President Trump's responding to and about what diplomacy gets us, we tried to get Otto Warmbier out of North Korea, and they sent back a man who they effectively made brain dead.
Yeah.
That is the president's gauge about whether North Korea will be swayed by diplomacy and whether or not they're willing to hurt innocent people.
Now, let's go from international to national. Things not going so well between President Trump and Mitch McConnell, basically over Obamacare. Here's what the president said about our friend Mitch.
Mitch, get to work and let's get it done. They should have had this last one done. They lost by 1 vote. For a thing like that to happen is a disgrace.
So the president's reacting to Mitch McConnell saying, you know, the president had excessive expectations about how things were going to go in the Senate with regard to repeal and replace. Does President Trump have a point? He expected Mitch McConnell to do his job.
I know, that's shocking, isn't it?
Shocking in Washington.
So Trump's crime is that he wakes up in the morning ready to get things done. In business, of course, you have people who are supposed to keep up with the leader. The fact is, Trump's been in there for 6 months, has already accomplished so much, and you've got, this is a legitimate argument, that they've had years to deal with this. My point, though, is not that McConnell has failed. I think that things are going exactly how as they want, as he wants them to go.
Potentially, that's kind of a conspiracy.
So
Let me just ask you, you must be reveling in all this Republican infighting, aren't you, Julie?
Well, I do think it's troubling that Trump continues to throw everyone in his administration under the bus. That said, I don't think that he had excessive expectations of Mitch McConnell. The Republicans had 7 years to put together a reasonable repeal and replace plan. They were incapable of doing that. In fact, they put together a bill that didn't please anybody, that was terrible, that of course was going to fail. So that is, you know, the fault of Mitch McConnell and of Paul Ryan, and I don't think it's unrealistic for Donald Trump to expect the GOP
must be tough for Mitch to live under that bus. Remember this guy? Jimmy Walker from Good Times is here to defend President Trump from the PC police. Then, anxiety over President Trump causing people to hire professional cuddlers. These cuddlers are going to be here later in the show. I've been taking on the PC police for years, always trying to find out what's really offensive and why. Are you someone that's very politically correct?
I would think so.
I can tell. Now, if you and I were working together,
sure,
and I said, you know, you just look dashing today,
I would think that might be a bit leading.
Can I tell a guy he has a really nice suit on?
Yes.
Nice tie. Is that a clip-on?
But why can't I tell a girl she has a nice pantsuit?
It's not over until the lady in the pantsuit says it is.
Can I say homosexual?
I think that's fine.
Is gay okay?
Gay's fine.
Can I call someone fat?
I think people's bodies are something that's kind of off limits.
That boy is a P.I.G. pig.
Yeah, I like a little junk in the trunk.
Can I call you skinny?
Me, yes. Me, yes.
Would you say large and in charge?
No. Maybe hefty? No, I don't even know if I would say hefty. Maybe thick?
thick. Islamic terrorism.
Okay.
Do you think that's offensive?
The term terrorist could be associated to anyone who is causing terror. So you interviewing me and pointing questions at me, I could say you're a terrorist.
There's far too much association in this country of Islamic terrorism with Muslims in general.
Are the terrorists we're fighting right now Presbyterians?
Aha!
And who says the PC culture has gone too far? This guy.
She's the bacon grease in my collard green. She's the fuse that sets off kid dynamite!
Good Time star Jimmy Walker is now a Trump supporter who says it's time to be more politically incorrect. He joins me now. So, Jimmy, how have things changed in the world of comedy? I mean, you can't really say that much anymore without getting in trouble by these people.
It's impossible. The one thing Donald Trump has done that is amazing throughout everything, he has united the comedy community against him. I mean, the whole community.
That's the only people he's united, I guess, right?
That's the only people he has united, whether it be gay comedy, black comedy, white comedy, transsexual comedy. They're all against Trump. There's nothing positive about Donald Trump. And I am a Donald Trump guy. I think for the most part, 85–90% of the stuff he does is great, and people need to look at it that way, whether it be dealing with the travel ban. As you know, Mexico was just in the House. They came through, and the Prime Minister of Mexico asked Donald Trump to come to the Mexican baseball all-star game, and Donald Trump went to the game, and he threw out the first Mexican.
Now, can you get away with a line like that? I mean, you do shows now.
Jesse, I get away with it every night because it's a positive Trump joke.
Right, it's not mean-spirited. Because if you look at all the late-night shows now, a lot of it's just really nasty. And you can tell it's not from a good place.
Everybody is, anytime Donald Trump makes a joke, people take it as a serious thing, and they do all sort of analytics about it. But if Stephen Colbert does a joke, look out, it's humorous. Saturday Night Live has made a living last year. I mean, there's a lot of people that hadn't seen Saturday Night Live since Belushi and Chevy Chase won.
Right. I mean, Saturday Night Live should be thanking the president for being who he is, because if Hillary was president, they wouldn't have any great material. I mean, this guy's God's gift to comedy.
They would never do an Obama joke, and you talk to Jay Farrow, he said, I had an Obama impression. They said, let's push back on the Obama impressions because we don't want to offend anybody. But they don't mind offending the sitting president of the United States, who had to move. Keep this in mind, Jesse. He had to move from a penthouse on Park Avenue all the way down to Washington, D.C., Section 8 housing into a house that was formerly occupied by black people.
Yeah,
Ouch!
Donald's really slumming it there over at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
And he hasn't lived there. He's left it for the servants. He stays on his own property.
Yeah, he's in Bedminster and Mar-a-Lago half the time. He doesn't want to rough it in D.C.
You know the interesting thing about that? He said he's been staying on his own property. He said yesterday about the diplomats being called home, it's saving us money.
Yeah,
we got right.
It helps with the payroll. Yeah, and everyone took it seriously.
And everybody took him seriously. Now, we got to look at it this way. Donald Trump not staying in the White House, he's saving us money.
That's right.
He's on his golf courses. He's playing golf. He's using up his own gasoline. He's saving us tons of dough. Donald Trump is the kind of guy I want to be the president. When he said fire and fury, that's the guy I want leading the way. I don't want a guy talking to China, and believe me, China, the only time they pay attention, China, is when we call them for food. That's the only time. When you call in for Chinese food, they got your number then. They pay us no attention. Do not count China as a friend.
But I think in China they just call Chinese food food. That's the difference.
They just call that food, and then they call for maybe some Mexican food and say, import that, but make sure nobody notices.
That's right. Now, Jimmy, we only have a few more seconds. Are the comedians going to lighten up on the president? or not?
Absolutely not, because they had 8 years with Obama, which they could do no presidential jokes. So they said, finally, we're unleashed.
Oh, they've been saving this stuff up.
They've been saving this stuff up, and they're trying to transfer the Obama jokes to the Trump jokes. That's where they're going. They said, let's do a tan joke, which would have actually been an Obama joke about Trump. You know what I wish? I wish that Fox would do a satirical show as a pro-Trump show to counteract. Just 15 minutes.
I think that's what Waters World is, right?
You guys, you are a leader in the way of Trumpdom, baby.
All right.
You got the positive stuff, and you show the intelligentsia of America when you go into the streets, and most people don't even know what a Constitution is.
Well, listen, I want everybody in Waters World to go see Jimmy's shows. He's out in Indianapolis, but he's all over the country, so go check out where he's touring around, and you're going to laugh, and it's going to be offensive, and you're going to like it, I promise. Jimmy, thank you very much. Is calling someone a sweetheart sexist? Ashley Judd thinks so. We'll play the tape. Actions speak louder than words. That's the subject of tonight's Waters Words. North Korea using nuclear blackmail to threaten America. How did we get here? President Bush and President Obama failed to prevent North Korea from achieving its nuclear ambitions. And Bill Clinton, in 1994, gave the North Koreans $4 billion oil and helped them build 2 light-water nuclear reactors. Here's what he said at the time.
This is a good deal for the United States. North Korea will freeze and then dismantle its nuclear program. The entire world will be safer as we slow the spread of nuclear weapons.
Obviously, past presidents have failed us. North Korea recently test-fired a missile that we believe can hit the continental United States, and recent intelligence shows that they have miniaturized a warhead that can be placed in an intercontinental ballistic missile. The regime still has not yet shown the ability to accurately aim the missile and have it achieve re-entry into the atmosphere from space. But we believe they are very close. Enter Donald Trump.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire, fury, and frankly power, the likes of which this world has never seen before.
Well, all hell broke loose in the mainstream media after that statement.
President Trump sounds more like a North Korean leader, unfortunately, than an American leader.
This is the first time that the dangerous apocalyptic statements of the North Korean regime have been met by dangerous apocalyptic statements by the President of the United States.
We have never heard this kind of bluster from an American president to another world leader.
And all talk and no action Democrats who've done nothing while North Korea has nuked up over the decades called the President of the United States the warmonger. Betty McCollum tweeting, North Korea is a global threat that requires American diplomacy. Donald Trump's threat of fire and fury is dangerous and risks war. Rep. Kathleen Rice added, this sounds more like a statement from the supreme leader of North Korea than from the President of the United States. And Rep. Ted Lieu said reckless for the President to make provocative statements about North Korea and back us into a corner. We need de-escalation, not a miscalculation. But it wasn't just Democrats. Senator John McCain had this to say.
I'm very concerned about the level of rhetoric that President Trump employed.
With all due respect, Senator, we have to be careful. Were you careful when you said this?
That old Beach Boys song, Bomberan, you know, bomb, 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 bomb. Anyway.
Now, Senator, I know you were joking, but really? So the swamp thinks President Trump is a greater threat than a nuclear North Korea. The Trump derangement syndrome has prevented them from realizing the obvious. North Korea nuked up while Washington whispered fluffy diplomatic words. Kim Jong-un threatened to wipe out California, and Donald Trump's strong warning is dangerous? Come on. This is how Democrats fight ISIS, too. Don't call them radical Islamic terrorists. We might be provoking them. Or when after 9/11, Bush called North Korea, Iran, and Iraq the axis of evil, the Democrats said Bush was out of line. Bottom line, Democrats are more concerned about Republicans' words than our enemies' actions. Joining me now, author and columnist Mark Steyn. So, Mark, any reaction to Waters' words?
Yeah, you're right. For the Democrats, it's always the American right that is the problem. They're the ones who are going to destroy the world. In fact, as you said, it's this diplomatic language that has provided the cover under which this guy has gone nuclear. And I think this is like... to go back to another point you made, yeah, they're not actually very good at being nuclear. He might try and hit Guam and accidentally hit New Zealand or Slovenia or Finland, or it might just clear the perimeter fence and hit a Taco Bell across the street from the base, assuming they've got a Taco Bell in North Korea, which is not clear to me at this point.
Something tells me they don't have that. Something tells me they eat rocks and pine cones.
Yeah, no, the Taco Bell, it's like it's Pyongyang. It's every supermarket is 5 items or less. Right. But that's the point. He's not very good at being a nuclear power. And if you look at the way the left were in the 80s, there were just 5 relatively sane countries that had nuclear weapons. And the left were completely obsessed about nuclear Armageddon at any moment. They wrote plays about it. They made films about it. They did novels about it. The left's whole iconography in the Cold War was the mushroom cloud. And
it was President Reagan who was going to create this mushroom cloud. I remember he called the Soviet Union the evil empire, and he put the missiles in Western Europe. And this cowboy was supposed to blow up the world. What happened? Russia collapsed.
Absolutely, but you're right. They had a parody of the Gone with the Wind poster with Reagan and Thatcher as Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara, with Reagan carrying Mrs. Thatcher in his arms, and the tag, she promised to go to the end of the earth for him, and he promised to arrange it. That's how the left... Now, that was when Thatcher and Reagan had nukes. We were all going to die. Right. Now it's just Kim Jong-un and the Ayatollahs. The left are saying, oh, what are you guys so uptight about? Why is Trump making a fuss about? What's he... North Korea's just gone nuclear. Susan Rice says, why can't you guys live with it?
And President Obama gave the Iranians, I think, billions of dollars, and we all know what happened the last time we gave billions to North Korea. They ended up nuking up on our watch. Now, Guam, now in the crosshairs. This is our territory in the South Pacific, and we base a lot of the B-52 bombers over there. They're going to be flying those missions over North Korea if they don't watch out. So next week, North Korea says they're going to test fire some missiles off the waters of Guam. What will President Trump do if we get a warning that those missiles will be fired? Because they're not that accurate. Who knows where they could land?
No, they've threatened to do some kind of Disney aquacade where they put one missile north, south, east and west of the island. And as we said, they're not that good. But I don't think he should wait until they actually do that. I think the threat of doing that is actually outrageous enough. That we talk about...
So you're talking preemptive strike, potentially?
No, I think he should, but I think he should take serious measures to cut North Korea off from the world. North Korea has 1 foot in the real world and 1 foot in nutso land. I mean, it has diplomatic relations with real countries like Thailand and places like that, and I don't think it should have. I think actually North Korea should actually be living in a bubble of its own and cut off from the respectable world.
Yeah, they are pretty cut off already, and they're going to be entirely cut off. They're going to have both feet in their own little hermit kingdom if they keep on acting inappropriately. Mark, thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, pleasure, Jesse.
Meet the Cuddlers, being hired to help people with anxiety over President Trump. It's really happening. Then Ashley Judd gets a compliment and calls it sexism. We'll play the tape and you can decide. Time now for some real news stories you probably didn't hear this week. We begin with scary moments for a South Carolina police officer who was shot 4 times by a suspect who had been harassing people. And it was all captured on body cam.
Take your hands out your pocket. If you don't stop, so I'm going to tase you. I'm not playing with you. Take your hands out your pocket. Take your hands out your pocket. Take your hands out your pocket. Shots fired!
Dispatch, please tell my family I love them.
Wow. This video just released from the shooting last year. Officer Quincy Smith sustained life-threatening injuries, but amazingly recovered. This is why police officers deserve respect. They have to make split-second decisions every day, regardless of who they're up against. This officer happened to be an African American, but we haven't heard anything from Black Lives Matter. Punks with guns not just threatening police, now they're targeting Trump. This time over food stamps.
I go to war with who the I want to, but I really want to go to war with Donald Trump because Donald Trump trying to take food stamps from my mom, and that's all the she got.
Hey guys, President Trump hasn't touched the food stamp program, just so we're clear. But food stamp participation is at the lowest level in 7 years because he's creating jobs. But I don't think these guys are watching Water's World. Imagine you're at the beach with your family, kids are playing in the surf, and out of the blue, a boat washes up with these guys. Roll the video. That's what's happening in Spain. A bunch of unscreened African refugees wash up and storm the beach. They ran for the hills before police could arrive. This year alone, almost 10,000 migrants have already entered Spain claiming asylum. Unbelievable. Is calling someone sweetheart sexist? Ashley Judd thinks so.
I was coming through security and a guy said, "Hey, sweetheart." And I said, "I'm not your sweetheart, I am your client." So I was already setting a boundary. And then when I was setting my things out, he said, "Hey, nice dress." I set my stuff on the doohickey, you know, the doohickey that rolls. And guess what happened next? He touched me. I didn't see him touch anybody else. And then for good measure, he just said one more time, "Have a good day, sweetheart."
After complaining to a manager, the self-proclaimed nasty woman received assurances it wouldn't happen again and vouchers for free coffee. Now, I don't know what happened. I wasn't there. I don't know if he touched her, if he didn't touch her, called her sweetheart. But sweetheart sexist? We'll let you guys decide. You think you're fed up with your town leaders? Check out this guy.
I'm going to throw some money at the problems. You and all these people are money driven.
That community activist getting the school board's attention. Afterward, they thanked him and donated the $3 to a Houston high school. And in fake news this week, Saturday Night Live suggesting Anthony Scaramucci's a coke addict.
I'm like human cocaine. You got a little bump on me. I made you feel excited, but I was out of your system too quick. And now that I'm gone, you're all depressed and edgy, and you're trying to figure out how to score some more Scaramouche.
The mooch. Missed that guy. Up next, how much would you pay to be cuddled by these folks? They're being hired to help people cope with Trump anxiety, and you'll meet them here. Did more than 1 million jobs during President Trump's first 6 months in office. It's great news. One of those booming businesses, professional cuddling. Apparently, many liberals are still struggling to cope with his win and need some extra TLC. My next guest says he's seen approximately 25% increase in clientele since Mr. Trump's election. Joining me now to explain this phenomenon, co-founder and CEO of thecuddlist.com, Adam Lippin, and certified cuddlist, Brianna Quijada. So, Brianna, I'm going to start with you. Take a look at your bio here. We have it on the website. It says, "I specialize in listening and laughter and have a passion for nurturing through non-sexual cuddling." So cuddling's not sexual, is that what we're saying?
Correct.
So people come to you because why?
They're looking, a lot of times people are just looking for touch and attention and someone to just spend some time with.
And they're cuddling. Now, you're the cuddler. So you would spoon them? Is that how that works?
Yeah, there's all different kinds of options. So as long as we're following the code of conduct, keeps it non-sexual, and pretty much everything is up for negotiation.
Okay, so spooning or touching or stroking, would those be the things that would make people feel better?
Those are some of them, but every session is unique.
Okay.
And they're possibilities are really infinite.
Wow. Okay, so everything is up for negotiation, and people aren't turned on at all during the sessions, or they are sometimes?
We screen people, we do an intake, and we talk to them and make sure that they are genuinely interested in a non-sexual experience. So by the time I see them, yeah, we're ready to go.
Adam.
Yes.
So people a little upset about President Trump, and you say you've seen your business improve since his election. People are anxious and seeking physical affection.
Yeah, so, you know, one of the people, John actually, who was quoted in the Rolling Stone article which sort of precipitated this, is an Iraqi veteran that came back. And he has done talk therapy and medication, and it wasn't really working for him. So he thought some human connection, some healing touch could benefit from him, and he states that this was the most important thing for him, and it's really helping him. And his issue with Trump is that he had a job with the government, and the day of when Trump won the election, he rescinded, he had a freeze on hiring, so he didn't get his job. And so those were some of the issues that he was dealing with. And we work with military veterans all over San Antonio, Texas, etc., that deal with issues of PTSD, anxiety, loneliness.
I would imagine some people are just upset with President Trump.
Sure.
Because he's rattled their cage somehow, and they are looking for someone to cuddle them to make them feel better.
Yeah, so we don't sort of screen based on political affiliation, and we have over 100 cuddlists all over the country, and in red states, purple states, and blue states. And our average age of our client is in their 50s. We don't know their political persuasion. So it could be the kid who's seeing their family for the first time that's nervous to meet their Republican father, or it could be the Republican father nervous to meet their kid who is supporting Bernie Sanders. We don't really know because we don't ask that question.
Okay. Now, Brianna, could you show me what cuddling would look like? How would some of this touch appear in these sessions? Maybe demonstrate?
So before every session, something happens, and so Brianna is going to demonstrate. So I'll play the client, and you play the cuddlist.
Okay, go ahead. Cuddle.
All right, Adam. So I promise that if at any moment I'm feeling uncomfortable, whether that be physically or emotionally, I promise that I will speak up. Will you promise to do the same?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
So that's how every session starts.
And then would you guys like to touch each other, or?
Well, so Brianna, are you a yes if I put my arm around you?
Yes.
And so if she says yes, I'd put my arm around her. But the whole concept of this is about consent and boundaries and owning what you want. So for example, a lot of times when a session starts, the cuddlist will say, okay, how would you like to start your session? The client will say, I don't know. So the cuddlist will say, listen, you're paying for this. This is your hour.
And it's $80 an hour.
It's $80 an hour.
Wow.
So
it's a lot of money. I'm sure it's worth it, Brianna. I'm sure you're an excellent cuddler.
Right now, the government is spending over $4 billion with veterans with issues with PTSD just for disability payments.
This might save a lot of money. Instead of getting them hopped up on Oxycontin, they could cuddle with Brianna instead. All right. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
All right, and the girl on a rope swing, you have to see. We're going to show you how this video turns out up next. Time now for Ask Waters, where I answer questions you've tweeted about me. First up, Brandy asks, Jesse Waters, what do you eat for breakfast? Bacon every morning. Next up, Geneva Hall tweets, Jesse Waters, why are you on television? Actually, I really don't even know. But maybe it's so I can bring you videos like this. You're welcome.
Grandpa! Okay, I'm actually going to go for my
Back up.
1, 2...
God, rope swings in the summer. We hope she's okay. That didn't look too good. We're praying for her. That's all for tonight. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And remember, I'm Waters, and this is my world.